This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It could be the same compounded in that, and that is between India and China. I beg your pardon, India and Kenya. Joining us in the Situation Room this morning in the hot seat is the High Commissioner of India to Kenya and Permanent Representative to UNEP and UN Habitat, Dr. Adarsh Swaika is here with us this morning. Balozi, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us in the Situation Room this morning. Of course, we're going to look into quite a number of things. It's always unassumed that Kenya and India have a relationship, but then maybe our assumptions can lead us in the right direction or in the wrong direction. But we'll have a conversation looking at all of this morning. So welcome to the Situation Room. Where you are is the hot seat of the Situation Room, and we look at a number of things. But before we do that, we normally go into the African continent. Every week, we come back from a different African country. Whereas we may bring things that we can carry in a basket, we bring things that we can carry in our minds in the name of their proverbs. This week, we're in South Africa, and I'd like to share the proverb that we are on today, and we'd love to get your interpretation of it. Mm-hmm. The day the monkey is destined to die, all the trees get slippery. The day the monkey is destined to die, all the trees get slippery. What do you make of that?
It's really difficult to make out. But if you could give me a hint on how to interpret that, that will be useful.
I would be cheating if I did that. But, it's Thursday, so why not? Imagine what happens if you're playing a game and you throw the dice. It's already done, isn't it? Can you come back?
One has to come back in any situation. And therefore, I would relate it to a situation where one has to try its level best to come back into the situation.
Interesting. But if it's already been said, it's already done, it's going to happen, can you run away from it?
You can't run away from it, but I think for all of us, I think it is always important to make the best efforts. Sometimes it looks that is a foregone conclusion.
Yes.
But I think there is nothing black and white. There are always shades of gray. So I think one has to keep trying, irrespective. You see, when I can give you an analogy, the elections happen, and the politicians keep on saying, we are winning, when the numbers are almost stacking against them. But I think that's the spirit. You keep on in a match. For us, we are cricket fans, and you see, we know that it cannot be done. You have to make 37 runs in an over, last over.
Yeah.
And you can only score 36, but still the game goes on.
Yeah.
Knowing well that it's done and dusted.
Yeah.
But you never know what miracle. If they do 2 no balls, 2 wides, you might get an outside chance.
See?
So
you didn't need my help after all.
Yeah. Remember as well, your interpretation can never be wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, but well done.
Because after all, it is your interpretation. So let's look into Kenya-India ties. How would you describe the relationship between these two countries?
In one word, excellent.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not saying it just for the sake of saying, that's my job to say. But if you ask anybody on the street, I think they have a very, very positive vibe of this relationship. And particularly in Kenya, this relationship, people say it started in 1896 when the Indians came for the railway line. But actually, that's not true. The other day, we were in the University of Nairobi, I think day before yesterday, when we engaged the young students, not only from University of Nairobi, but across various universities in Kenya. And the topic was reimagining India-Kenya relationship. And to us, some people placed it at Indians started coming in 1896 when the railway line was being built from Mombasa to Uganda. But actually, they have been coming here for a millennia.
Okay.
They have been trading with the East African coast. They have been, but yes, documented group coming could have been one during the railway line construction. But they have been coming here, they have been trading, they have assimilated in Kenya. Today, you see that Indian Kenyans are very much part of the social fabric of the country. So I think this relationship has historically very, very strong bonds in contemporary times, equally so. And I'd say that it has a very, very solid future. And I see India and Kenya as partners in progress.
Okay.
Yeah. When you talk about connection between Kenya and India, hey, Indian Ocean. But
Okay.
I digress. But you see, recently you assumed office in Nairobi, becoming the High Commissioner in Nairobi. And you look at the history that the country has had over the years. You talk about the railway, you talk about the culture, you talk about business between the two countries. And moving forward, how do you envision that developing into being something even greater? Because even as we speak today, many Kenyans leave here to go to India for medical support and all that. How are we looking at the future, two countries working together in strengthening this bond?
See, for me, and I think for many people would agree with that today, any relationship is measured a lot in terms of economic cooperation. Economic numbers, what is your trade, what is your investment, how much has translated into real jobs on the ground, how is the technology being transferred. I think these are real questions to measure a relationship, and I think we are doing fairly well on that count. And I think that is where we have to focus much, because there is a lot of potential. I say because today Kenya is developing fast. You're doing a lot of infrastructure projects. You have to achieve the Vision 2030. Similarly, India also is on a very, very strong developing path. We have the Vision 2047. Today, we are the 4th largest economy in the world, and in the next 1 or 2 years, we are going to be the 3rd largest. But at the same time, both our countries are developing. We are trying to provide skills, jobs to our people. I think we can learn from each other a lot. And that's why a lot of trade and investments is happening between our countries. Today, Kenya is one of the most important gateways to East African landlocked countries in the Central Africa. So I see a lot of potential on this front, particularly trade and investments.
Okay. I guess that was the question. That was what I was wanting to look into. That on what fronts do you see Kenya and India collaborating into the near future, and how would that actually play out?
So a lot would be related to trade and investments, but I think on the technology side, there is a lot we can do. On the health side, which you mentioned, a lot can be done. Today, last year, if you see, over 10,000 Kenyans visited India for medical treatment. But at the same time, the reverse is also happening. Reverse, when I say reverse, that the Indian hospital chains are looking at Kenya. So last week, when there was the Kenya Investment Conference, almost 1/3 of the deals signed were with Indian and Indian origin companies, and 2 or 3 ones were related to setting up of hospitals in Kenya. So I think the Indian hospitals are looking at coming to Kenya, providing affordable, at the same time, quality healthcare. So I can speak about one of the diagnostic labs of India, which has come in Kenya, and they are spreading across the country, and I'm told that the costs have come down drastically. So I think that is what we have to leverage. Volumes, better treatment, quality healthcare, and all this is happening. The other thing which we are doing a lot is how do we look at technology. Today, India has grown in technology, particularly IT, information technology. A lot of firms, a lot of ministries in Kenya are using the services of Indian IT companies, and they're very happy with that. We have recently also signed the pilot project for DigiLocker with Kenya government, and I'm sure that that will be a very, very good thing for cooperation on this front.
Yeah. You know, there's one area for me that is really close to my heart, and that has to be when you talk about clean energy and climate change conversations. And as we speak today, India is one of the biggest, because even in terms of achieving your idea, in terms of having clean energy, India achieved that before time, you know, and you combine that with what Kenya is doing as well. And Kenya is also a champion on matters to do with climate change and clean energy. Over 90% of energy in the country is actually clean. Are these areas of collaboration, because you talk about manufacturing, India and Kenya, are we looking at collaborating in these areas, in these spaces, to say that we have achieved these before, ahead of time? Kenya is equally doing a lot that it's doing, and perhaps an area that the two would be working together?
No, this is a very, very good story where both India and Kenya have done exceptionally well. I can tell you that I visited the Onkaria geothermal plant a few days back and really surprised and very appreciative of the fact that how you have leveraged geothermal energy to be one of your primary sources of energy, and very clean energy. As you rightly said, 90%, over 90% of Kenya's energy is green energy. Insofar as India is concerned, historically we have relied on thermal energy, but increasingly we have shifted towards non-fossil fuel sources. Today, if you see, over 50% of India's installed electricity capacity is from non-fossil fuel sources, and we have achieved our nationally determined contributions in the terms of Paris Climate Change Treaty well ahead of time. And we have a target of 500 gigawatts of energy from non-renewable sources by 2030. And we are already ahead of our objective. So I think both our countries are doing exceptionally well on this front. Take the example of Kenya of planting 15 billion trees by 2032. I think that's a remarkable achievement and a big plan. Similarly, in India, what our Honorable Prime Minister has done, last year, he embarked on Plant for Mother campaign. That is, you plant one tree in the name of your mother. And that has taken India by storm. We have planted over 1.5 billion trees in 1.5 years. We are doing it globally as well. When I was in Kuwait as ambassador, we engaged with many stakeholders, including the governorates and the UN Habitat, to plant trees in the name of the mother. And it's actually very, very, I think it touches people's heart, and we would be happy to do the same in Kenya, so that both the initiatives of both the President Ruto and Prime Minister Modi come together in terms of planting trees.
It's interesting when we look at the sheer volume in terms of numbers that India then possesses when we come to population, people, and that this can be a driving force, like you've just mentioned, when you're looking at issues to do with climate. And it can also, in some cases, be a hurdle, because how do you bring so many people together at once? But you've been able to do that. And one of the areas that you do that is through elections. Being able to, I mean, I think your elections go over a number of days.
2 months.
There you go. By the time everybody has voted, because we're talking about a billion people.
Yes.
So people are voting continuously for 2 months?
Yes.
Okay.
In different phases, because we have a large population,
Yeah.
different states coming to election in different phases, so that we can manage the numbers.
Okay. What are things, because the good things about bilateral relations is that you have the movement of information in both directions. So what issues do you have when it comes to looking at how you bring together the vote and count the vote in a transparent manner that keeps all stakeholders satisfied? What are ways that you've been able to implement for those intended outcomes?
So in our case, I think for quite some time we have been using the electronic voting machines.
Okay.
And I think they have been very successful. I think the transitions, all the political parties have accepted the results of the election. There is a very smooth transition in all the elections, if you see the history of Indian elections. So I think, and obviously we have improved over time, and we have the central elections of the central government, central parliamentary elections. We have the state elections, like some of the states are going into elections now, 3-4 states. So I think it is a continuous process which keeps on happening. But I think that has been a very fairly well-oiled process of elections.
Yeah. You know, one thing that stands out when one looks at India is you look at the creative space. Why do I talk about creative space? You talk about Indian movies, and there is a segment in Kenya where right now we are here, and the Indian movies is what they're watching. You know, you look at the music industry in India, and it's doing very well. You know, and you look at Kenya and our creative industry, and one looks at exchange program on the same, because one would want to say collaboration between between Kenyans and Indians in making sure that these space filmmakers would come shoot in Kenya and produce great films, as well as filmmakers from Kenya do the same in India. It is an area of collaboration because for a very long time, many look at cooperation in terms of trade just on GDP. We are doing well in terms of coffee and tea that you're shipping out. But creative industry is one space that for a very long time has been overlooked. One would say from this side, But you look at the way the Indian government is investing into the creative, and perhaps is an area as well where collaboration would take place. Would you reckon?
I fully agree with you. I think it is not only the hard numbers of trade and investments only. I think it is the softer things which we have to look at, and some things are happening. Though I would like it to happen on a much more bigger scale. We had one of our very famous directors coming to Kenya to shoot one of the films which will be released soon. I am aware of the interest of Kenyans in Bollywood films, and actually we are going to do a film festival this month very soon, I think, bringing some good films. But I think I agree with you. We have to do much more on the cultural side. Recently we sent a Maasai troupe to India to participate in a Mela, which is an international festival. We have also done some performances here, and we will be doing more on the cultural side. And I fully agree with you. There is, we have to do much more in bringing the two sides together on theatre, on film, on music, on museums. I think there's a lot we can do there.
There is a question, maybe a bit of a social question, that Kenya has a large Asian population that are citizens of Kenya. How do you deal with that relationship? Because not just for all intents and purposes, they are ID-carrying Kenyans who are, do we call them of Asian origin, or do we say that they were Indians living in Kenya and have now taken up citizenship, or are they Kenyan? It may sound like we're teetering on some interesting waters here, but it is a question that comes into the minds of people all the time. So it would be great to then be able to understand, does the Indian government deal or transact, have relations with these individuals as Kenyans or as Kenyans who were formerly Indians? Even my question, it's starting to be a little bit confusing because you're not sure how. How do you deal with that?
For us, there is no confusion.
Okay.
They are Indians at heart, and Kenyans in both physically as well as owing allegiance to your country. So we feel that that's a very, very strong connection between India and Kenya. They are the building bridges. In fact, I may be the formal ambassador, but they are the true ambassadors of India in Kenya. And that's the beauty of Indian diaspora across the world. We have around 35 million Indian diaspora across the world. And wherever they are, they contribute as citizens of that country to the development of that country. And you have seen that. You know how well Indian Kenyans have contributed to this development of this country, and they are such an integral part. But from the government of India, the people of India, we still consider them as part of us. The government of India gives them a card called the Overseas Citizenship Card of India, which entitles them to travel to India without any visa.
Okay.
They have certain other rights in India. We also celebrate their achievements every 2 years in terms of a big event in India called Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. That is the Indian overseas celebrations. And we give them a very high award. It is called the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Awards, spread across countries, around 30 awards every 2 years to celebrate the achievements. And I'm happy to say that there have been 5 Pravasi Bharatiya Samman awardees from Kenya, and the first one was in the first edition of this event, and that was Mr. Manu Chandaria.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
You know, We talk about two countries working together, trade, bilateral agreements, and we also have people-to-people exchange. And one of the easiest way that we've seen people engage on that level is by making it easier for people to move around. So here we talk about Kenyans traveling to India and Indians traveling to Kenya. And with this now there is the visa conversation that comes in. So are we having discussions on how we'll make it easier for these two demographics to easily travel among between themselves, so that perhaps Kenyans do not need a visa to travel to India and vice versa, so that we see tourism in India is big. Kenyans manage to travel there and enjoy what India has to offer, and the Indians as well traveling to Kenya and enjoy what Kenya has to offer. So you come enjoy our Maasais and we come enjoy the Taj Mahal. Are we having those discussions?
We actually are not having any discussions on this front right now, because I think both the visa processes are very easy and simple. We get Kenyan visa in a day or two, the ETA. Similarly, you get Indian visa within a day or two. Sometimes we have this electronic visa for Kenyan nationals.
Yes.
Sometimes it takes 4 to 5 days sometimes, but then you have the option to come to the High Commission and get a visa, a paper visa in 1 day. So I think that is very, very smooth. But obviously, there is scope every time there is a scope. We are trying to make the processes much more user-friendly. We have enabled transactions, digital transactions for visa application, whether it is M-Pesa or Airtel. So there's no cash involved generally. So I think it is running very smoothly, but in future, you never know. I think we can transition to a much more visa-free. I don't know.
Yeah.
What kind of development partnerships happen between India and Kenya, if any do?
Very much. I think that's one of the core pillars of our relationship. So when you say development partnership, it generally has 3 pillars.
Okay.
One is the concessional lines of credit. The other is the grants. And the third is the capacity building. And I think we have been consistently doing all the 3 elements over the years. If you talk of concessional lines of credit, we have given to Kenya on consistent basis for the last 10-15 years. You know, the Rivatex was done with our concession line of credit. One of the transmission lines was done through a line of credit. Currently, there is a SME sector line of credit for helping SMEs in Kenya to uptake more projects. Similarly, on grant financing, we have done a couple of projects. The Mahatma Gandhi Library was renovated by Government of India in University of Nairobi. We have done a CT scan machine for the Kenya Navy Hospital. We are going to do some more. So I think there have been continuously grant projects over time. But the biggest of all this is the capacity building. We have trained thousands of our Kenyan friends in different spheres. Every year we give around 400 scholarships, fully sponsored by Government of India. One for short-term training courses from 4 to 6 weeks, and others for even undergraduate studies, postgraduate studies, PhD under the ICCR, the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, which is open now for the next 2-3 months. So I think that has been a very, very important part of our work, which we do. And this has really brought people-to-people linkages very strong. And we celebrate these capacity building programs. Earlier last month, we had a program to celebrate the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, which is popularly any Kenya. You go in any part of the country, you will find an iTech alumni.
Right.
And iTech alumni who have gone to the highest positions in the government of Kenya. For example, the Chief of Defence Forces is an iTech alumni today. Yesterday, I called on the Honorable Chief Justice of Kenya, and she had gone on the Distinguished Visitors Program of the ICCR. So we have people who occupy the highest position in the government of Kenya.
Okay.
And this has been a very, very successful part of our cooperation.
Balozi Swaika is here with us this morning, and we're looking at India-Kenya relations, what this has been over time and what it has the potential to be looking into the future. We'll come and look at future relationships between the two countries and see what actually is in store. That's the conversation we're having this morning. We'll take a quick break and come back and continue with that. It's 29 minutes to 10.
This, the only way to start your day.
been a strong foundation to that relationship for very many years. And in terms of what then looking into the future, the world is changing, whereby soft power is a thing that's used essentially towards control. And that nationalism has made its way back onto the agenda of very many a country, whereby we left the 2000s where globalization and the global village phenomenon was the flavor of the month. Now, everybody is fighting for themselves, and everybody wants a situation whereby they will be regarded. Oftentimes, folks have come, and the girl in the corner who's pretty and everybody wants to talk to is Africa. Because of resources, because of numbers, because of strategic positions. India, as part of BRICS, clearly, also is fighting for that soft power, whichever way you want to look at it. Is Africa on the other end of that courtship for India as well?
I would say that Africa has always been an important partner for India. It is not the run for resources or for leveraging countries. I think we have always found Africa as a natural partner. And the numbers of Indians in Africa speak for themselves. If you see here, you see in South Africa, we have 2.7 million people, in DRC, in Nigeria, any part of Africa you see, you'll find Indians. And that's because the comfort which we found here. When I came here, I never felt that I'm away from home, because you immediately settle down, you feel that it's a second home. So for us, and the Indian Ocean connects to us so much. So we have never found Africa as a separate entity. But yes, when you are here, you want to see that the relations should be for the mutual benefit of the two countries, of the region. And so anything, earlier you were speaking about development partnership.
Yeah.
About any, for example, we are doing many other things on the digital side, on the technology side, on the health side. I feel that when it comes to India, I can speak of India, that we take relations without any conditionalities. We don't believe that we will do this for you in exchange for this.
Yeah.
So it is not a conditional thing. It is something which we feel that we should do together. And India is a firm believer in the philosophy of the world is one family, which we called Vasudev Kutumbakam.
You're going to say that again?
Vasudev Kutumbakam.
Okay.
That the world is one family. And that was precisely the reason why when we hosted the G20 in 2023, we made it a point that the voice of developing countries should be heard by the G20. And that's why we held two Voice of Global South conferences. There were 100 heads of state and governments attended that. And we took their feedback and mainstreamed it to the G20 agenda. And we are very happy that during that G20, African Union became a permanent invitee to the G20. So I think for us, I think Africa has always been a natural partner and will remain a natural partner. And we have also been engaging with Africa in terms of India-Africa Forum Summits. We have done 3 editions, and we will very soon will have the 4th edition. So I think for us, it's a very natural ally, and we don't see that we have to try to gain something out of it. Obviously, when there is a relation, there will be things done to learn from each other, to do things in mutual benefit, to have mutual respect, and that should be the guiding principle of our relations.
Yeah. You know, we've talked about investment and how Indian investors are looking at Kenya as being one of the ripe countries to come invest in the recent Kenya International Investment Conference that happened this year. We look at Indian investors who want to come set base in the country. So one asks the question then, what makes Kenya that darling that Indian investors would say it makes sense to invest in Kenya? And which sectors as well are we looking into, or which sectors look into establishing in the country?
See, there are already many of the Indian businesses, most of the big companies, Indian companies are already here. I think over 200 companies. Some of them are household names, whether you talk of the Airtel or the TVS or Tata Magadi. There are a lot of Indian companies already present. But Kenya's position as a gateway to East Africa, to the landlocked countries, the connectivity which you are trying to build to the landlocked countries, I think these are enablers for Indian investments. I think a lot of them are looking at it. They're looking at the region, which country gives them most sense of security in terms of risk to investments. I think they factor in all these. Businesses do their own due diligence. And we have seen that there is an interest. You talked about some sectors. I think a lot of machinery is coming from India, whether you speak of textile machinery or pharmaceutical or dairy. I think these are some of the sectors where there is keenness from the Indian. Pharmaceuticals is one, where if they come and set up plants, they can also look at the wider EAC market, of which Kenya has been a leader, COMESA, and so on. I think that is one attractive policy. And the way you are now bringing in investor-friendly policies, I think that would bring in more Indian investors.
Okay. What would be the handoff or trade-off is the word I'm looking for. What would be the trade-off? Obvious, and if you were to compare, and some of these things may seem pretty obvious, but if you compare the development track record of India, and if you were to put that face to face with what's happening in Kenya at the moment, how are you able to encourage to say, okay, well, these are some of the things that you can actually do to even get where we are? Because what would be the trade-off for investments, for example, if Indian companies set up here? Would Kenyan companies then be able to set up in India, for example? Those are some of the questions that folks ask.
Very much. I think India is a huge market, and we are today one of the countries who are attracting a lot of investment. If I get my numbers right, we have attracted over $100 billion in the last few years. So I think India is very much open to investments from our Kenyan friends. I think not only investments, trade, diversify trade, bring more your products into the Indian market. A 1.4 billion market equal to the African continent. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for the reverse also. So very much. I invite all Kenyan friends to look at, Kenyan businesses to look at India for not only for trade, but for investments.
So one of the big things that happens is medical tourism. And we talked about this a little bit. But every week, we could even say with the normalcy of every day, there are people who are leaving Kenya to go to seek healthcare in India, whether we're talking about non-communicable diseases like cancer and heart disease and all of these. For some reason, with medical staff in India, who, by the way, you have counterparts of the same skill, if not better, in Kenya, for some reason are able to have affordable, I mean, by whatever standards you want to describe that, affordable healthcare in India, and that people can go for a fraction of what they would pay here to have these medical procedures done and then be on their road towards healing. How has that happened?
I think that has happened because of a very conscious effort being taken by the government that we have to create more and more medical centers of learning. We have drastically improved our medical education. The number of colleges which have opened up in the last few years, over the last 20-25 years. Volumes is which brings costs down, I think, and there is a lot of competition which has enabled that. So India's philosophy of health has been quality with affordability. I think that is what makes it a very, very important center of medical treatment, and people come from all across the world. It's not only Kenya.
Yes.
So I think that happens over a period of time, and I'm sure that in Kenya also the same thing will happen over a period of time. And I mentioned one of the Indian diagnostic labs coming here and really bringing down the diagnostic costs. So I think cost is a very important factor. I would agree with you that you have also very trained quality staff. But I think that confidence will develop once quality and cost match. And we look forward to that.
Security is one area that you find Kenya and India have collaborated on by the fact that we share the Indian Ocean. And you talk about maritime and military drills that we continue to see on a daily basis. Every time an Indian ship is passing in Mombasa, and it's a spectacle to watch. And this is an area that continues to see investments going in and the collaboration getting in there. So how critical is it for security between these two countries to be the center stage, especially on the Indian Ocean and the ocean corridor, to ensure that security does exist? And how does that then also affect trade and investment between the two countries and the wider countries that share that resource?
We are linked by Indian Ocean. That's a fact. That's geography. We can't change that. And that's a positive thing for us. Over centuries, people have, this has been a communication link between our two countries. And therefore, I think this has grown from trade and investments to defense and security. So today we have a very excellent defense and security relationship with Kenya. Every year there are a lot of Indian ships, and as we speak, next week there is an Indian ship which will be docking in Mombasa, and we will also have a commander of the Western Naval Command visiting Kenya in 2 days' time. So this has become a very important part of our defense and security architecture. We have done a number of things between the two military. A lot of training is happening particularly, and that is keeping our defense forces updated on various things, and it's happening two ways. So I think this is an important part of our overall bilateral relationship.
Okay, so let's look into the future a little bit. I mean, you've talked about the fact that you'd like a relationship that continues between these two countries, and then taking, of course, the geopolitics of the region and, of course, the global stage. Certain things will change going into the future. I mean, we see that today, whether there are conflicts in certain parts of the world, oftentimes the allegiance for which side you are on becomes a subject for communication or relationships between two countries. Do you see that the side whichever country is conflict-wise then dampens or heightens whereby there have been relations between two countries? In short, will the conflicts of the world where people are asked to pick a side affect the relationships between Kenya and India, for example?
I don't think that we will be affected as such by the conflicts which are taking place now or in future or in the past, because I think both India and Kenya have generally called for a mutual dialogue, called for dialogue and diplomacy, called for de-escalation, and therefore I think today conflicts cannot be won militarily. There has to be dialogue and diplomacy that solves. And I think both our countries share such positions, and I therefore do not see any reason for our relationship being affected by those.
You mentioned about education and exchange programs that do exist. So here we talk about scholarships that are there, the opportunity for Kenyans to travel and Indians as well coming to Kenya and enjoy what education has to offer. And when we talk about that, then one would ask on a deeper level, where are we with that, and how then do we scale that even further?
That is very much happening. I think it's not happening now. It's happening from last 4 or 5 decades. And I was really surprised when I found our Kenyan friends, some of them have gone to India in different states of India. If you ask a common person, they will name some of the metro cities in India. But I have come across Kenyan friends who have done in places which you will not know. So education has been a very strong binding factor. They have gone on self-financing. They have gone under the Government of India scholarship program. They have gone on under Government of India training program. And now we also see that Indian students are coming to Kenya as well. So a month back, I was visiting Strathmore University, and I found a number of Indian students who are coming to Strathmore. Day before we were in Nairobi University, we found some Indian students there as well. I think education is a great leveler and it has a lot of potential. So we discussed with many universities how we can look at exchange programs, how we can collaborate further. So then 2 months back, there were a number of Indian universities who had come to Kenya to offer courses to Kenyan students, and I found a large number of students who were at that education fair. So I think that is something which is growing, and we need to make sure that these young generation should be aware of the deep historical past of a relationship, the potential for the future, because they are the building blocks of the relationship. So I think education is a very, very important aspect, and we are very much aware we are doing a lot on that front.
And I think it's true, because I mean we look at the heavy subjects, or we look at the sciences and things like that there can be exchange programs where things have happened in the past. You talk about one of the universities today that there's often that exchange. And looking at the other side of things, do you see what are some areas that you feel that there can be further collaboration when it comes to some of these subject matters from an educative point of view?
I think agriculture. Because both of us are very agriculture-based economies, and a lot of agricultural research is happening in both our countries, and some of it is being shared also. Then livestock. Yesterday I was meeting PS Livestock. A few days back, I was meeting the advisor to the president, Mr. David D. And I think a lot of conversation was on agriculture, livestock, dairy. I think this is one area where we can. Technology and AI. I think if you ask me, in the AI summit which India hosted in February, the largest delegation was from Kenya. Over 200 people and a lot of students. So I think that is one area, and I'm told that you have some excellent AI labs in some of the universities. So I think that is one area we have to leverage. Health. So I think things which dovetail into people's daily lives. I think those are important areas where I think the education needs to learn from each other in terms of R&D and other things.
We talk about tourism, but tourism is an area that continues to change over time, right? So there is the people-to-people exchange, the culture, there is the food, there is the movies, there is the music that is there. But in terms of scaling these even further from that space, how would you say both countries are playing?
I think both countries have excellent tourism destinations. There is no doubt about that. Today, Indians are one of the largest foreign tourists by arrival in Kenya. I think I have the 2024 data where it says that we were almost 133,000 and fifth largest by foreign tourist arrivals. Similarly, Kenyans are also going to India, I think more for medical treatment, but when they go for medical treatment, they also plan to see certain places. And India is a 365 days tourism destination. You go to one part of India, if you are going in summer, you will find a hill station. If you are going in winters, you will find somewhere where it's not, in the south of India where it's not hot. We have beaches, we have mountains, we have wildlife safaris. So you name a thing, we have everything. So I think both countries are endowed with a lot of tourism potential. What we need to do is to market it more. I think particularly for Kenya, I must say that you have to market more in India. Today, the upper class, Masai Mara is in everybody's bucket list in India. But I think you have to market more. And Indians are now, with the increasing prosperity levels in India, they are venturing out. A lot of Indian tourists are going abroad. They are now tired of destinations which generally people go, so they are looking for a new destination. I think that is where Kenya stands. Huge chance. If even a fraction of 1.4 billion decide to come to Kenya, I think Kenya is bound to gain from the tourism industry. So there is a lot of potential on tourism, both sides.
Yeah. And even as we see things happening here on the ground, Kenya's going into an election next year, and to then see how things may change, while of course remaining diplomatically aligned and correct. What would be your hopes to see Kenya going into this new election, into an election, and what would be the hopes for an outcome?
Continuity. continuity of policies with India, and that has happened over different administrations in Kenya. So I think we have been very lucky to work with all governments in the past and in the future, because I think there is a common perception of goodwill between India and Kenya. I think if you go to India, you speak to anybody, there will always be a positive sentiment about Kenya. Similarly, if we talk to our Kenyan friends, I think we see a positive, very positive sentiment about India. I think it is the people-to-people ties are so strong that irrespective of the election outcomes, I think there will always be a very strong India-Kenya connection. And the governments have also done that repeatedly.
Is there anything that Kenya can learn from how India is managing its election? Because you look at the election in India, first of all, civil servants work into it. We have the technology that is there. Is there anything that you would say from where you sit, Kenya can learn from how India is managing its election, which as a result would make Kenya's elections be better and trusted pretty much?
I think both the election commissions, they also, I think within the framework of the meeting of the election commission bodies, share a lot of knowledge, practices, best practices. And I think the IEBC commissioner was recently in Delhi in January for a conference of election commission bodies, and they continuously share best practices to see every country is different. There are different local conditions, there are different, and it's a sui generis system. You can't replicate completely one system or another. So I think they keep on. I think this is a conversation which every management election commission body tries to do its best, and I am sure they would be speaking to each other on how they can learn from each other's best practices.
Of course, looking towards a time whereby the common goal, and I want to go back to the BRICS really quickly, because there are certain achievements developmentally then that gives an opportunity to be part of this system whereby you're looking at economies. You talk about India being the third largest economy in the world.
Fourth largest now.
Fourth largest now.
Very soon third largest.
Very soon, knock on wood. Third largest in the world in a minute. And is also saying that we're going to begin negotiating certain things, that it's not business as usual. That the BRICS has been bullish in its attempt to say, come on now, we can't have a situation whereby things are happening the way they have been previously. And that's the message. Does it continue to be the message until now you're no longer BRICS nations and other developing nations join BRICS or join the status quo? Kenya being one of them, looking towards an economy that's growing into the future.
No, for India, it's not only BRICS. We are part of different multilateral and plurilateral bodies. We are also part of Quad. We are also part of G20. We are part of BRICS. We are part of SCO. So I think our policy on multi-alignment, and we speak to different countries for different interests. So I feel that I think for us, I think to keep your national interests in mind, you have to work with different countries for different interests. And with Kenya, our interests are very much aligned on a number of issues.
What other kind of countries do you see joining the BRICS? I mean, would you imagine that a country like Kenya, looking at other countries who are on that development agenda, would then be able to join the system?
I can't predict the future, but there has been a recent expansion. In the last BRICS meeting, there was an expansion of BRICS. So right now, I may not be able to comment on when they will include new members, but I think the door is open.
Indeed. I mean, of course, very many insights to then be able to look into, things to look forward to, a development agenda to then, visit and say, where were we? So, I mean, it's been great to then go over some of these things with you this morning. Dr. Ardash Swaika is the High Commissioner of India to Kenya and Permanent Representative to UNEP and UN Habitat, and has been our guest this hour. Thank you for being
very
here
much.
with us and having these conversations, these insights. Very interesting. And of course, I think Kenya and India continue to look forward to, these relations that can continue in this manner. Asante sana. And thank you, everybody, for keeping it the Situation Room this morning. Going into the Easter break. Enjoy your break. Enjoy your holiday. And we'll be back with more conversations after that. Good morning and happy Easter. It's 10 a.m.